and nobody's trying to sneak anything through, but you've got the items there that was included on what we're using the money for and what the request has previously been made for, and we're just trying to carry out your wishes from before. And certainly this body and these commissioners can make that decision if they want to change anything, but I think we need to keep everything on track and not to take a pause on doing the good work that this is what you asked for in the previous years.
And it's a working document. We approved it back in 2018, and it's the same timeline, but we've been presented with a new wrinkle in our county situation, which I'm talking about, again, the jail and the grand jury and the black mold. We need money to address that, and to date, I haven't heard it. And I know you say the sheriff's coming with the plan, but as far as I know, this is the non-general fund pot of money that we have to distribute. So that's what I'm asking about. But again, what's moving back for the fire department?
We're not there yet, Commissioner. I was just asked to make a recommendation, and I have not yet made that recommendation. These items that are being voted on here are not anything new. Much of this is money that we pay to the health department for mental health, for blight, for debt service, for economic development. So those items we pay annually. So much of this money is that. There are very few, and we've got some road money for LMIG that goes in there, which is our match, but there's very few, quote, new projects in this.
I'm only asking about, what, 3 line items? Like, I get that.
Okay.
I'm only asking about 3 and 2-point-something million about public safety.
Well,
And that's what I yield, I get it, so I'll close it out.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. Commissioner Tillman?
And maybe Julie can answer this. Julie, couldn't we use the CARES Act money to make some of these? This is part of public safety, health issues, COVID, including the jail. So couldn't we use some of the CARES Act money? And then we have, and then how much money total do we? I'm asking 2 questions. Number one, can we use the CARES Act money? How much money total do we have of CARES Act money?
Well, I can answer that in a second, but tell me first, what are you wanting to spend? Are you wanting to buy PPE? Are you wanting to do something to the building? What's your suggestion?
All of it. I mean, we don't, someone would have to make that assessment to see, the complaints and the issues. The mask issue, to me, is more simplified. I probably personally have enough masks that I could give folks in the jail. A box of masks is $500. I probably got 2 or 3 of those. I can give everybody free masks in the jail. I think folks in the jail should be accommodated with masks. I've spoken to the sheriff. I understand some of the folks are using them, and causing drainage issues or whatever. But for the mold and some of the stuff that has some issues of concern, and we would have to look at the assessment to get we have the CARES Act funding and money that the federal government has sent down to use toward these things. And so, and we've asked, the public has asked, this has been an issue. So, why are we not doing anything to help with the jail?
I agree. There may be some items that could be purchased out of CARES funding, and remind you too that the sheriff and fire got some additional grant funding to do some of the PPE work. I think what we are waiting for and what is being discussed is when the plan and the request comes, we will certainly look for the ways to fund that. There is money in SPLOST for sheriff's buildings. There is money in his commissary and in his confiscated, and there are probably some things that could be funded out of CARES fund. We're just waiting for that, what I think is being developed right now, the true ask, so we can put those in the right places, and we'll bring that forward. But for today, this is just for us to keep the projects going that we already have in place for SPLOST, so that we can continue the work in LMIG and buildings that are happening right now.
So this follow-up and conversation is to the commission. There is money set aside for the sheriff budget and those items that we do not have control over. This new separate money, which is CARES Act funding, we could use that for things that we're supposed to decide on, such as when we was talking about using it for the homeless, health issues. There's an item coming up where we're talking about, using it, $600,000 of it for mental health. That's on the agenda. That may be the next item. And so we don't want to use it to help improve the jail and these issues. I don't even think maybe some of this stuff would cost $50,000.
That's true. We have, to answer your other question, you all had designated about $4 million of that CARE funding in 4 different buckets, but that expired December 31st. So there's $4 million to be spent, and we're bringing them to you when we have a plan, as you referenced, the mental health. And so as soon as we have further details, I think we would bring something back.
Yeah, just to briefly answer Commissioner Tillman's questions, I think we do have the money to do what's needed. I think we can't assume what the sheriff needs and go through his procurement process to spend money that we have nothing before. So when the sheriff decides whether he's going to utilize the funds that he has, which he tells me for, and he's presenting a plan to take care of those problems, I can't force any kind of remodeling over his place or mold remediation or new locks on him. It's his facility that he's responsible for running as constitutional officer. We stand ready, willing, and able to pull the fund where needed if it's necessary to meet the needs of the jail, other than building a new facility. Commissioner Tillman?
Mr. Mayor, these issues with the jail, we all know have been going on for a while. We saw the sheriff hold a conversation in press conference about issues that's been happening over 40 years with the jail. So if we know the issues, and we've been talking about this for years, and we got CARES Act money that the federal government has sent, and this has been an ongoing issue, then the next item, we're talking about spending $600,000 on mental health issues, and we've got, and I'll wait to address that, but if we've got CARES Act money set aside, and we've seen that the sheriff has said, you know, in a budget, you have stuff planned out for what you want to utilize it for. It's just like a tornado or a storm, unforeseen thing. This is unforeseen that has come up more recently about the issues in the jail. And here's a pot of money that's sitting over here that the federal government says, here, y'all can help with mental health, with health issues, public safety issues. Why don't we want to move that project forward? You know, I mean, I would like to see you and your administration get on board with some of the stuff that we want to implement as well. We're getting on board with stuff that you want to implement, and I think it works hand in hand. And I think we ought to, you know, do this hand in hand. This is important to a lot of folks that have family members sitting down in the jail that have some serious issues. And the sheriff cannot do it alone. And if we say, here is X, Y, Z, a number of funding to take care of this, what can you do now? I think he'll accept that. And I think to Commissioner Watkins and others that have also had an issue, and there's a grand jury that all of a sudden that, you know, we didn't realize that was supposed to, you know, be doing tours and all of this. Let's address it with the CARES Act funding. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman. All due respect, the grand jury came back in 2017 and basically told this commission and the mayor that you needed a new jail. And you had the opportunity in 2018 to place that on the ballot for voters and to raise SPLOST money for that, and chose not to. So I think the commission has had ample, you know, opportunity to take care of the sheriff's department. But it's, again, I respect Sheriff Davis as a constitutional officer. It's his job to take care of that jail. If he needs additional fundings, I can assure you he would make that request on the commission, and we would do that accordingly. Commissioner Wynn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For Julie, maybe this question is for her or Dr. Moffitt. Just give me a simple answer. The CARES Act responds to things that have to do with this coronavirus, correct? Things like PPE, they don't have to do with black mold, replacing ceiling tiles, things like that are not specifically addressed in that. Is that correct? So we can't use CARES money for that purpose. As much as we'd like to do some of these things, that has to come from another area. So CARES Act money has to do specifically when we talk about mental health, because people are having issues with mental health because of having to stay inside and not being in the public and things like that. But this act can only pay for certain things. Is that correct? And some of the things that were addressed by the grand jury were not things that were covered by the CARES Act.
Well, I can tell you just the short answer, Commissioner Wynn, is this money can be used for those purposes.
That's why I'm saying this. So because
it can be used.
I understand where the commissioners are coming from that are concerned about this, but that money can't be used for what you're talking about.
This money can be used for that purposes.
It can be used for
it can be used for that purposes
black mold.
because that money was received in reimbursement for monies that we had expended, and now that money is now been placed in our general fund, and it's no longer restricted. So the commissioners can decide how to use those funds.
The only clarification I want to make is, for example, the money that the sheriff and fire department received through a JJ grant that was $200,000, it would have specific uses they would have to follow. But to your point, yes, what we had to do to get reimbursed, we had to follow very specific guidelines, provide receipts. You remember it was a very complicated, but now that we've taken that money in and distributed it to the community partners who provided receipts that were eligible, there is some money available that now functions more like a general fund dollar.
Should we not consider the use of that money still for CARES purposes?
I think
What they-
as you will be shortly.
I think that's the purpose, and I think that's the conversations that we're following up on, conversations that Commissioner Watkins had last year in the old administration on things like homelessness, those experienced homelessness, as well as the mental health piece that we have on the calendar today. I think we're trying to utilize those funds for their intended purpose, even though we're not
That's what I'm
restricted in our
saying.
general
Should we
fund now.
continue to utilize it for the purposes that they were initially intended, not for something else?
That depends on the pleasure of the board. Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. Commissioner Tillman, you had a follow-up?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Many of us ran on public safety, but I want to remind us that public safety is just not hiring more deputies and just giving raises. Public safety is ensuring that the public safety men and women that work in harm's way are secured and taken care of as well. And that includes taking care of this jail and those citizens. So those men and women that work down there, there are a lot of information. A lot of these guys that come out of jail are true enough for sending information, but I can assure you that a lot of this information are coming from folks that work down there and want to see the same improvement. So when we talk about public safety, we need to make sure and understand. And then the CARES Act money and what we would call free money, we need to truly understand what it is. Don't just look just to disagree with somebody you want to disagree with. Understand what the money, and I appreciate you, Mr. Mayor, by sharing that the CARES Act money and the restrictions that Julie has alluded to gives us a lot of leeway and leverage to do certain things. And I think maybe that's a conversation we can have another day or behind the scene, because there's some stuff that I think we would like to have done that the CARES money can provide and that we don't have to pay back. And I don't think there was a matching funding or anything. So I like to, we'll get together and let's have a conversation on some of that. But I think these improvements could show the public that we care, we are concerned with their loved ones in the jail and those people that's working there, that we offer him something. If he gets a list and say how much, let's find out how much. And we can put a cap or a limit on it of how much we want to spend outside of his budget, and let's just try and work it from that. But I look forward to working with you behind the scene on that, sir.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Tillman. Commissioner Watkins, you had a follow-up?
So, again, I'm curious, and I intend to vote no to this, but I want to know why IT upgrades can't be upgrades to the jail. I get it, the jail's been getting worse and worse from year to year. Now it's before us, and I feel like we're going to be the guys to fix it. Whether or not we use CARES Act or any other funds, it's on us to fix sooner rather than later. And like I say, right now, while we're talking about money for public safety, so thank you for the time, but yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Watkins. We've got a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Watkins. We'll move on to item 6, contracts for implementation or renewal. 6A is a resolution for the mayor to execute an agreement with Community Foundation of Central Georgia to establish the Rosa Parks Square Fund for the development of Rosa Parks Square Park. That is a motion sponsored by several individuals. Pro Tem Clark, you like to make that motion? Commissioner Bronson, you want to second that? Thank you, sir. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that item? Commissioner Watkins, I've got that look in your eye again, so you want me to tell you? You want to tell the people what that is, or you want me to? Commissioner
Sir?
Lucas? You want to go
Me?
ahead? Yeah.
Oh,
I can tell you want to speak.
Yes, the road, well, I'm sure we'll share all the details. The only thing I want to say is that this is the mechanism that's going to start the raising of monies to support that wonderful plan to upgrade Rosa Parks. So, and I'd like to be added as a sponsor on that too. And I guess you have some additional details.
Well, I just want to let people know that this is an effort through the Rosa Parks Commission as well as the Community Foundation to raise private monies to help that park. And we certainly want to always encourage people to give philanthropy, and we want them to contribute to making Macon a place we all can be proud of. So I have signed off on that. We're the agent for that, so any funds that go into that foundation will come through the county for purposes of that Rosa Parks Commission. So all this is just letting this commission know that we have this, they have this fund set up, that we're part of that fund, and these are private funds that will be contributed. Hopefully, we encourage people to contribute to the Community Foundation to help that park. So we do have a motion and second. There's no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to item B, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional services agreement with the Allen Law Firm, LLC, the Seeking Law Firm, LLC, in the amount of $13,000 annually to provide indigent defense services for Macon-Bibb County Municipal Court, with funds to be provided from the Macon-Bibb County Municipal Court budget, professional services. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Lucas. Any question on that regards? Commissioner Watkins, you have a question?
And it's more general for, I guess, this section. Could y'all just, a lot of these are professional services. Could y'all talk me through your procurement process? What's happening? What is your selection process? Or
Well, for professional services,
just in general, I guess as it relates to these, but yeah, for sure, professional services, go ahead.
procurement process that we follow based on the amount and the type of item or service that we're looking for. When it comes to professional services, we have the discretion to contract with the vendor of choice. I believe this vendor was recommended by the municipal court judge. Matter of fact, this recommendation came from the municipal court judge. When she took office, she realized that some defendants that came before her were not given opportunity for counsel, and so this would pay for that. And I don't know how this vendor was chosen, but this was the vendor that was recommended.
They were recommended by municipal court. Both of these firms do substantial business, and they're familiar with the court. The other thing is we have to provide representation for those who can't provide representation for themselves. These are small amounts, and the reason you have two firms is because there are situations you get into where multiple defendants involved in a case. You need to have conflict lawyer, or another lawyer may be tied up in another court, so you need to have someone there. So they've asked for this money. This is a renewable once a year contract. It may or may not be needed if that's going to be a true environmental court there, or school zone runs through municipal court. But this is their request, and they're doing it within their budget. And we're asking the recommendation be accepted by the commission. Okay. We have a motion and second. I'm sorry, Pro Tem Clark, you had a question?
I just want to be asked to co-sponsor this, please.
Okay.
I ran a legal clinic for the homeless for 3 or 4 years, and I can't speak to the need of this more strongly.
Thank you, Pro Tem Clark. We do have a motion and second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. This motion carries unanimously. Be sent to the consent agenda. We're going to move on to item C. I do expect the next couple of items to take a moment. Does anyone need to take a comfort break? Okay. This time we'll stand in recess for 5 minutes. Thank you. We're out of recess and back on the record. We're going to pick up with item C. This is a resolution of the Macon-Bibb County Commission authorizing the mayor to execute a professional services agreement with the Southern Center for Choice Theory in the amount of $50,000 monthly to provide mental health services at no cost for certain marginalized communities in Macon-Bibb County to be paid from the CARES Act grant funds, contractual services line item 7. This motion is sponsored by myself, Mayor Pro Tem Clark, Commissioner Paul Bronson, Commissioner Mallory Jones, Commissioner Lane Lucas, and Commissioner Wynn, are you still on this one? Commissioner Valerie Wynn. Did I miss anyone on that? Okay. Those are the items there. Commissioner Tillman, you have a question before we begin?
No, I don't know if we're gonna do it.
Okay. Okay. At this time, I've asked Gloria Smith-Cisse to come forward with a Southern Choice. I just want to let you know, we did have some information on this past Friday. As many of you know, that I have always stated that public safety is not just putting boots on the ground. And Commissioner Tillman reminded me of that just a couple of minutes ago, and it's not. We must be proactive instead of just being reactive. This is my effort, along with some great information that came out of our transition team, to help Macon-Bibb County move forward and be proactive. We hear all the time all the negative things that we hear concerning violent crime, particularly involving our youth. Our youth are worth saving, in my opinion, and we have to be proactive about that. This is our step to use a data-driven process. And I say data-driven process, we all know the neighborhoods. It's no secret in Macon-Bibb County of the neighborhoods that we need to put extra effort into, that we need to focus on if we're ever going to turn this county around, with poverty, with jobs, with the crime rate. This specific focus that we're looking at on this mental health initiative is driven to young intervention for young adults, young people at an early age, and the parents of these folks. And a lot of these initiatives are dealing with anger management, conflict resolution. Those are two areas that we want people to settle disputes without resorting to guns. I appreciate Commissioner Lucas and her effort and counseling all the years that she had with our school system to stand forward and make some very good remarks the other day. I hope that you would consider supporting this amount of money. I can tell you that $600,000 in 1 year for this project, with some measurables that we're going to bring forth for next year to make sure we're successful in this, is just a mere drop in the bucket of what we spend millions and millions of dollars policing Bibb County, housing folks at the jail, running the court system. So if you want to think about it from a financial standpoint, go right ahead, because you're going to find out we're going to save a lot of money by putting money up front. I choose to think about it in saving lives. And I'm tired of looking at young kids, and I say young kids, that could be young adults that have prematurely ended their life through violence. And I can't sit by on the sidelines and not make an effort to try to better our community. So this time I'd like to let her tell you just a little bit about where her qualifications are and her company, a little bit about the mental health plan. Each of you have already received copies of the contract, as well as a detailed plan on the areas we are focusing on. We have put 7 in there. There may be one change to one of them. If Brookdale, if we don't have that facility anymore after June, we may look at another alternative spot for that. But all the others we believe are pretty concrete, and there are partners that are willing to help with us. So Ms. Gloria, if you could go ahead and begin with your presentation with some information. They've got all the initiatives, but tell us a little bit of what you've got going on in your qualifications before we can ask you some questions. Thank you.
Okay, I think the first thing is to tell you that I have a master's degree in mental health counseling. I have a master's degree in social work, and I'm a doctoral candidate. I have been trained in working with children with problematic sexual behaviors, children who have been traumatized by sexual or physical abuse. I am trained to do work with young people who have been exposed to commercial sexual exploitation. I am also a trainer of other mental health professionals in being able to work with this population. I am certified in choice theory and reality therapy. I am a TFCBT certified therapist. I am a certified professional counselor supervisor. I have worked for the last approximately 20 years working with children who have been sexually abused through the Rainbow House in Warner Robins. I work with children here in Bibb County who have been exposed to sexual abuse. I am trained in parenting, several different parenting curriculums, nurturing parenting, parent interaction, parent-child interaction therapy, peaceful parenting. I have facilitated I can't tell you how many groups working with parents on learning how to help their children to recognize and regulate their emotions, on how to be more effective parents. I have written my own curriculum on parenting. I have facilitated workshops locally, on a statewide level, nationally, and internationally on issues related to various mental health concerns. I have copyrights for books that I've written. I am trained to use the DSM-5 in psychopathology, for use in psychopathology. I'm also trained to use the DC 0 to 5, which is a tool I'm very excited about being able to use here in this community, because it is specifically designed to identify mental health crises or mental health problems in children from 0 to 5. I am play therapy trained. I could go on and on. I have spent the last 20 plus years learning how to not only intervene when there is a mental health crisis or issue, but to also prevent mental health crises. And so one of the things I also think is important here is to help everybody understand that what we have ignored over the past is the fact that it is possible to put some prevention efforts in place. I really appreciate having an opportunity to work in primary and secondary prevention as opposed to only doing tertiary prevention, and that just means we're waiting for people to get into trouble and then try to do something. But if we are working with the young people that we plan to target, then when we are working with these young people, what we will do is help them to learn to manage, what they can control, which is if they have a mental health diagnosis, they can take their medication if they need medication, go to therapy if they need to go to therapy. But our focus will be on primary prevention. So we can also do secondary stuff where we work with somebody who might have been exposed to something and long before it becomes a big problem. But I think it's really, really, really important that we understand we can prevent a lot of the things that we see happening in adulthood and adolescence and adulthood if we put this kind of process in place.
Thank you. And I think if you could talk in particular, we had about 7 areas, including the Brookdale area, Hillcrest, Unionville, East Macon through Rosa Jackson, Pleasant Hill through Booker T. Washington Center, over in Houston Avenue at the Pendleton Homes by communicating with Macon Housing Authority using one of those facilities well. Pinehorn Avenue, the Hispanic Community Center. Tell us why it's important to target those areas and what kind of services that we can expect to give the constituents in those areas and how that can help reduce crime.
All right, so we all know that according to the World Health Organization, poverty, discrimination, serious kind of life experiences can play a role in the mental health of a community. And so the communities that we have targeted are communities that are low income. There is probably more crime in those communities. So the community trauma, the community stress that children are exposed to can exacerbate symptoms or mental health concerns that may be in there. They may be genetically have a genetic predisposition for. So we can help to reduce these symptoms or the onset of these symptoms if we're working in those specific communities.
Thank you. This time we're going to move on to some questions, and I do recognize you've got Andrea Cook with you today, one of your folks that work with you, as well as therapists and very knowledgeable in the area, and we all know her story. Just recently, I think of yesterday, there was a great story about her life and her interest in her fight, so we certainly appreciate her being here today in support of the effort. We're going to move on to a couple of questions from commissioners that'll help us understand this a little bit better before we vote on this. So this time I'll move on to Commissioner Tillman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, this is to commissioners that, and yourself, Mr. Mayor, that can answer some of these questions that the public poses and that I could not answer for them. So, first of all, the COVID-19, and I think this money is coming from the CARES Act as well, and we're talking $600,000. First of all, I want to go back that nobody, and I've had this conversation with the Commissioner, Lucas, and she said it to me, nobody, and I agree, should be against mental health. You know, you just, and helping and serving the mental health. So you can't be against that. This organization is a fine organization. I'm sure of that. My question, and others would have, is the process. And the process is that we're spending funding for a organization on mental health, and River Edge is providing the same type services. That's calling. DFACS, our Macon-Bibb Health Department. We've got anger management groups. So questions that I couldn't answer. Is there someone who can write the prescriptions? How did we decide this amount? How did we choose this particular group? And if we go back, because this is CARES Act money dealing with COVID, March of 2020 is when things began to shut down in Macon-Bibb and around this country because COVID was prevalent. Now, I spoke earlier about COVID funding and CARES Act money. And there are so many businesses that could also, before this, that we talked about last year, before this administration was enacted, and the mayor has said he's paid attention to us. And so with all these businesses out there, if we took and wanted to do something similar or the same with $600,000, and we have not put into place. Commissioner Watkins last year was saying, where's an application for businesses that's in need of money similar like this? That if we took 60 businesses and gave them all $10,000, that would equal $600,000. Or if we took 1,200 businesses and provided $5,000 to them, we could help those businesses. And so folks that's paying attention, businesses that have closed down, and y'all bear with me for a moment. Security Finance, Vivinet, Blow Lounge, LaSalle Sleek, Amanda's Cakery, B. Monroe Boutique, Spud Dogs, JC Thrift, Metro Specs, Pink Confetti, The Creamery, LaFace Salon. They're all closed. And we are supposed to receive this money and funding from CARES Act to help these folks, but there's no plan and there's no application. And I'm sure others who are striving and being successful could use the same help. Brookhaven Lounge, Spatique, Blue Sky, Fall Line Brewery, Kinko's Kitchen and Cocktail, X-Mark. The numbers goes on and on that we are not doing the same, and the CARES Act money has come. And so, Mr. Mayor, we appear that this commission is deciding to pick and choose who we're going to spend CARES Act funding with, and these people are deserving, like all these other businesses, that we have no plan for, that we keep saying, we heard our budget and finance person, well, we've got to come up with a plan, we've got to have something. Well, we asked this administration last year to create the application process for the plan so people can apply for funding. So the number one question is, how do we pick and choose people that we're going to give CARES Act money to versus all the other ones that's sitting out there. And again, this is needed like other businesses are needed to survive. And nobody should be against mental health and helping the mental illness out there, because we know there's a need. And so I yield at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman. I won't attempt to answer all your questions, but what I will say is I can't answer the failures of the previous administration or this commission who sat here and didn't let that happen. Each of you had a vote, and for whatever reason you didn't get enough votes, I can't answer that question. I didn't get a vote. It wasn't my plan. This is my time. This is a new day in this administration, and this is part of my plan. And I'm the one who did this resolution. I'm the one who's asking for you to vote on this. You know, people always question the process when you're trying to get minority businesses involved. And I'm not trying to say you're doing this, but part of our transition recognized that we have disparate treatment around Bibb County. Part of it recognized that not everybody has a seat at the table. Part of it recognized that if you go through a process that has some systemic failures, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. So sometimes you have to be intentional. And I don't mind telling you I'm being intentional in this situation and reaching out to this group to formulate a plan that's going to get into our communities. I make no apologies for it. If people don't like it, then they don't support it and they don't vote on it. That's the bottom line. You could have 9 different proposals with 9 different companies here. I chose this company because I like their plan. I think it gets to the heart of what we're trying to do and trying to be proactive. This is my plan. I think it's great use of dollars, great use of CARES Act funding or general fund, no matter where the money comes from. I'm certainly not prioritizing this over other things. I do have a plan for small business. I have been talking to the Biden administration. They've asked me to hold off on things until they put their plan out there. We have some money at ECD right now that's going to help some of the people you talked about. That's going to be very specific for those who fell through the gap that they can apply for. We do have a plan. Just because it's not before you now, don't assume that there's no plan. We're going to tackle each of these areas. This is primarily important to me because I turn on the news week after week, year after year, and I see the innocent young lives of people taken. And I can't let this happen on my watch. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus in the previous administration, or not even necessarily this commission here today, but I'll tell you, I can't go back in time and do. What I can do is do what I can control. And what I can control now is to put before you my best effort in getting, and I'll say it, most of these young African-American women therapists are in these neighborhoods. They know these people. You think they're going to trust me to go into Booker T. Washington and tell them that they need counseling? They're going to trust me in Pendleton Homes? No. After a while, I hope they do, but right now, that's not the situation. Do I think they're going to trust somebody like Andrea Cook? Yes, I do. Do I think they're going to trust somebody like Gloria Cisa? Yes, I do. This is our effort to be intentional to try to meet the needs of the people in our community. So we don't have to worry about arguing about, do we need a new jail? Do we need to go repair these locks? Are we going to have to do these things at the jail? Because what she mentioned, that's tertiary. We're trying to get people on the front end, and this is what our goal is. I think it's a great use of $600,000. I think this is a great company. Certainly not putting them over any of those businesses that went out of business. We hope we'll be able to help them out. There was some funding for them last year through independent private foundations as well as the government where they applied for PPP. Some of those businesses are great businesses you mentioned. Some of those were not going to be in business anyway, despite COVID. You have to have your business plan in place, and we're going to have one for those. But I have been asked, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to fund plans like this business program and then have it preempted, because a lot of the information that Biden says, if you've received this kind of financing, you're prohibited from getting this right here. So we don't want to throw somebody a little money, $10,000, and prevent them from getting something that could really save their business, because $10,000 generally is not going to do it, of hundreds of thousands of dollars that they may get. So that's all I'm going to answer on that question there. Certainly don't want to take everybody else's time. I know Commissioner Bronson has his light on for a while, so I'm going to let him ask his questions or make his comments.
Thank you, sir. Hello.
Hi.
First and foremost, thank you for all you do. From one mental health counselor to another, thank you. I understand the need for partnerships and so forth, and I just wanted to ask, could you kind of a two-part question here. Could you elaborate more so on the partnerships that you're going to have throughout? Are we looking at partnering with the VA for children of deployed parents, both military service, fire department, EMT, and so forth? And then, of course, Bibb County school system. How does that look? And then the course of session, right? As far as how many sessions from start to end are we looking at doing to help and assist our community?
All right, so we are, I didn't mention this, but I'm already trained to do some work with veterans in the community, but we have a plan to create a commission, a collaborative of sorts, where we are going to invite all of these organizations, a representative from all of these organizations, to sit with us and to help us to develop a plan for working with families in those specific areas. And so that was the answer to your first question. So would you ask me your second question again?
Second question stemmed around the course
Okay,
sessions, as
okay,
far as
okay.
how many sessions are we looking from beginning to end? What is your proposal on that piece?
All right, because this is such a large number of people, we are committing to reaching between 300 and 500 individuals in the 12-month period. We anticipate, I was kind of doing some numbers for myself, and I'm not a good numbers person, but I was trying. And so we calculate about 72 people a month. The goal is, after we complete an intake process, which allows us to collect some preliminary data, and part of which we will use as a post-test measure, so that we will not only have numbers to tell you how many people actually crossed our threshold or we counted, but if there's any improvement in the indicators that we are going to measure. So once we've done that part, I am in the process of creating a six-week curriculum, right? So that every family that we touch will somehow go through this curriculum, right? There will be the individual therapy for those who need individual therapy, but we would also include, because children live with their parents, we will also include a parental component. So during the time that we're working with the kids, we'll also be working with the parents,
Okay.
right? And then there will be, in this same 6-week period of time, there will be outreach efforts to to engage the community around this family, because we know that individuals live and reside within the children in the family within the community, within the neighborhood, within the community. So we will do these activities, and again, we will do this will probably be just quantitative data that we'll be gathering on the numbers of people who actually participate, but we will have, folks will do the 6 weeks, the child, the parent, the family, the community, and then we will measure pre and post and be able to provide data on efficacy.
Awesome, Dale. Thank you so much. And last thing here, just a small dose. Internship opportunities for surrounding schools, i.e. Mercer, Fort Valley State University, and so forth, that have counseling programs. Will there be an opportunity for, or a program put in place that allows the internships to come in and assist as well?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Right now, I probably have personally about 6 or 8 interns that I supervise. And they're from online schools as well as local schools, but we definitely plan to work. Mercer's right here in our community. Middle Georgia State is right here in our community. FESU is right here. And they have counseling programs, right? Social work programs. I'm a social worker. And so we definitely plan to have interns from all of those programs helping us with the individual therapy, the group counseling, the community projects.
Thank you so much.
You're very
Thank-
welcome.
I yield back.
Thank you, Commissioner Bronson. And I just want to draw attention that in her proposal that we have sent everyone, it says up to possibly 3 hours of counseling per week per child. The target is 300 to 500 families in those communities, but she also mentioned all the contracts they have with people like Atrium. I know there have been some conversation already with River Edge has reached out to them. I know the domestic violence to the crisis line are another avenues. Certainly, we're going to make sure there's plenty of referrals there so we get the right folks in there. So this is not something they're doing alone. Their first several weeks will be focus groups to put the coalition together to make sure they're all on the same page and kind of have a good pool to pull from. You need a lot of therapists in these situations, and they certainly have the relationships. Mercer Medical School, Middle Georgia State, Fort Valley State, those are great opportunities because we realize they have to get up, I think, 2,000 hours
They
in,
have to
and
get
they
it
need
done.
places to go
That's right.
to help, and that could be a way that we can sustain the project for the future. Our goal is not to have to give you a check every year, that we get a way to sustain this program. This is a pilot program that we're trying to do. So I appreciate answering those questions, and I appreciate you co-sponsoring that, Commissioner Bronson. I think I saw a light on. Commissioner Watkins, you have a question?
Yes, I got a couple questions about process, like I always do. But before that, I did.
One at a time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Talk to me a little bit about how the public will access the services. Is it referral based from different agencies, or is it walk-in welcome, and how does that work?
Okay. We will actually do both. People can self-refer, and we will accept referrals from our partner agencies.
And I guess talk to me a little bit about the partnerships, the DFACs of the world, the River Edge. Those are our long-term mental health partners.
Okay.
And I think Commissioner Tillman alluded to earlier that we want to be sure that we are including them, because typically they're at the forefront of our mental health solutions. So how's that synergy?
We have not actually, I haven't actually engaged in the conversation with River Edge, but I did receive a telephone call yesterday. And I returned the call, but it was kind of a telephone tag day. But we do plan on including River Edge as one of our partners, as well as we already have a contract with the Division of Family and Children Services, and we do we have one with State Court. We do work, and we will include all of these partners, and they will be included in some way. We haven't worked out all the details yet, but they will be included.
What happens if we exceed the 500 or 72?
Won't that mean amazing? Okay, I'm sorry.
It would be.
Sorry.
It would be. And
Yeah.
don't misunderstand me. I think
Yeah.
this is phenomenal what we're
Yeah.
what we're working on here.
Yeah.
But it is money, y'all are business. What happens if you were to, I don't know, first day, 1,000 people show up?
Aside from being overwhelmed, if 1,000 people show up for a public forum, I would be incredibly excited. However, we won't stop, because what we know is that one interaction can't provide what we need people to have, right? We can spend 45 minutes, hour and a half with individuals and teach them a lot of things, but with I like to use I'm trained in choice theory and reality therapy, and what we talk about when we train is we do 25% didactic and 75% practice, right? So if I expose you to information, that would be the 25%, 1,000 people show up, I'm exposing you to information, but you have to practice. In order to create a new behavior, it takes time, right? And so the practice comes after the instruction. So if 1,000 people show up to an event the first time we do an event, that's absolutely amazing. But we're going to gather data, specific information, to find out if they're in particular areas that we're targeting, and then arrange for services to be specific services, targeted services, interventions to be implemented in those areas with those people.
So group counseling and
Group
individual
counseling,
plans as well.
Individual counseling.
If you may, so how are staffing levels, and a little bit about how that, I see 7 areas of focus, and it seems like they're related to physical brick and mortar locations, but could you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're still working on all of the logistical stuff. I do know that we will be bringing on some additional individuals to help us, but we haven't worked out all the details, as far as I'm aware, about all the actual physical locations. But we do plan to physically be in some capacity or other in all of those neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. And I guess with some of the relationships, the county is providing a facility, and some of them I don't know.
So,
Yeah,
so
like
can
you say,
I,
you're
can I
working it out.
please explain
That part
that?
I can provide that.
Okay, yeah. my
So
part is the
basically,
therapy part.
just to kind of touch on that, because she's not in the process of doing the leases and all that information there, but the 7 locations we've chosen are relationships that the county has. There will be a tenant at Booker T. Washington, which is on the agenda here in a couple of moments. That's going to be their anchor there. They're also Macon Housing Authority has allowed Pendleton Homes there. We've met with Robert Walker, who's been part of the team. We've had about 15, 20 people working on this within Macon-Bibb County and other partners over various times. Robert and his staff are securing a room on a regular basis inside of Gilead over in Bloomfield. I forgot to mention that earlier, I apologize. And then, of course, Rosa Jackson, as well as the Booker T. Washington that we have in the Brookdale currently right now, which we may end up moving as one of those locations. And then the Pinona Avenue, the Hispanic Community Center. So we've reached out to each one of those, either we control or other people, to form a relationship with there. We'll be doing in-kind services for this particular one through our rec departments. They'll be paying a separate lease on the Booker T. Washington for their use there, since we're not going to be running that building. So those are locations they have. My understanding from speaking to her and her staff previously, they're going to be targeted. They're going to be boots on the ground going into the neighborhoods. They're starting out with forming a coalition of those folks you talked about. They have relationships with those people that we discussed earlier. She wants everybody at the table to do this as a community approach. They have technology involved. This is very data-driven as well, and I think I saw Hamtech Solutions on there because they're certainly knowledgeable about the law when it comes to HIPAA and having the proper information documented to protect people's rights and privacies, and they've taken care of that as part of their proposal. They realize that these are going to be very vulnerable people they have to work with, and they got to be very flexible about getting to them and developing a trust enough to them to get the process they need. But as far as the facilities, those are facilities that we have targeted. I'm not saying they can't change or be flexible. We have other avenues and within those communities that we may be able to use. Frank Johnson comes to mind over in that area as well. But anytime we get an opportunity to expand, but right now we believe that the data suggests those are our focal points, and that's why we chose them.
The rationale behind that question was I was curious, were we providing you with assistance on the brick and mortar, and it seems like we are. So the lion's share of the $600K is for staffing and for services to the community.
The actual work that's going to be done.
So I was concerned because 7 leases can be a lot for that amount of time. So
Consume a lot of money, yes, sir.
That's a good question. We want to make sure that the money gets where it's supposed to go, and it's not a bunch of overhead. It's mostly personnel and therapy that's going into the community. The bricks and mortar is just a very small portion of this money. Any other questions, Commissioner? Commissioner Howell, you had a question?
Yeah, more of a comment than a question. For way too long, we have put mental health on the back burner and not looked at it in our community, not only in Macon, but all over. And I applaud you, Mayor, for this step in the right direction. And while I'm one of those guys that likes to hold people accountable, I know that the administration will do that. I believe that the old adage about an ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. My brother was a former deputy here, and I have several friends on the sheriff's department. One particular female officer called me last week pleading for something like this, and I'm going to be more than happy to give her your number because she understands that those youth today are the ones that we're worrying about housing in the future if we don't address the problems now. So I appreciate what's going on here. I'll be wholeheartedly behind it. I love the fact that we do have some CARES money that we can use in this to implement this pilot program, but I think everybody needs to understand this is a pilot program that's going to, if we're serious about fixing our problems, $600,000 just to start. But I'm 100% behind this, and thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Howell. Commissioner Wynn, you had a question?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for being here this morning. Your background is commendable.
Thank you.
Gloria, I'm sorry I didn't catch your last name.
CISSE.
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 I wanted to be appropriate about that, but I wanted to say that your background is commendable. And I know that you can't spread out to all these 6 or 7 locations that we're going to have. So I have a question about the staffing, how qualified they are to deal with all these things. I'm going to ask a few questions and let you answer in a minute. I find myself, interestingly enough, agreeing with Commissioner Tillman on some questions he had to begin with, and Commissioner Watkins has addressed some of the questions I had about location and facilities and the cost of that. The mayor has just addressed that too. On these 7 issues that you have that's listed here as far as scope of services, in my feeling, it all starts in the home.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at one of these as parenting classes. How do you get parents to sign up for this? And parents, I'll use that term somewhat loosely because you may not have but one parent involved. You may have a grandparent involved in taking care of our youth. And I think this all stems from crime in our community and trying to get our youth to go in another direction. I certainly am all for that. Very much support that. But how do you start? How do you get the parenting? How do you get the parents or the people that are supposed to be parents there for counseling? And then after that, I think you said you go through a 6-week session perhaps. How do you get them to come back? And I think of things like AA where they have meetings once a month they keep coming back to because you never are not free of that problem with alcohol is what they tell me. But how do you do that? How do you get the parents involved? That's the biggest thing. And get them there and keep them coming, and then how do you follow up with them in the months to come to see if that's working and it's really taking hold with the families and the children, which is what we're really focusing on in my mind. I'll stop and let you answer some questions.
Okay. All right. So you're right. It is very much a challenge to have parents to want to enter into a parenting class, primarily because we all believe that we already know how to be parents. So what we tell people when we talk to them about parenting class is that this is not me trying to say you don't know what you're doing. This is me trying to help you improve the skills that you already have. I want to offer you an opportunity to, one, have a mentor, have somebody that you can talk to. You'll learn some things. You know, what I know now, if I had known when I was raising children, my things would have been a lot different in my life. But I only want to share what I've learned through the literature with you. It's an opportunity. Take from it what you can. And so the other piece is sometimes when parents sign their children up for services, whether they're mandated or not, there's always a parenting part. And so many of actually all of the children that we provide services to, we tell their parents there's no way we can do this work without you. You are our therapist at home. So we need to have a conversation with you every time we have a conversation with the child. And we include it in that kind of conversation.
So as this again, the life of a child is established at home with who they grow up with and their surroundings and their environments what's around them. And so do you have follow-up? I asked that question about follow-up beyond the 6 weeks. Do those children come back and say, hey, we're doing this is what's happening? Because it's going to be a lifelong thing. Okay?
Yeah, it is an extremely long process. And so what I visualize and some of what we do is we ask people for permission to continue to contact them because otherwise you can't, right? So we ask for permission to continue to follow up, collect follow-up data. It's probably going to have to be something that we include in our informed consent, that there be a follow-up component, because we can do the 6 weeks and teach you all kinds of stuff, and then you just kind of stop doing it after you're no longer in our presence. And I would like to say that based on what I've done with adult difficult mandated clients, I generally have, like in our family violence classes or our sex offender groups or whatever, we have people, we get permission and they allow us to follow up. So we can do the same with these parents. And even, like, once we've developed a relationship, and so Andrea, I'm not going to get us in trouble here. Once we've established relationships in communities, some of the things we initiate, we can teach people how to do. We can actually have parents who facilitate parenting groups, do peer support stuff in their neighborhoods. We can teach them how to do that so that long after we're gone, they still have the capacity to maintain, sustain that.
It was asked earlier about your relationship with our DFACS and River Edge here, and you said you've had some phone tag with River Edge, but I'm assuming you're gonna work with them. I would assume that they address most of these issues, these 7 issues that are in this proposal here. I'm not sure about the financial counseling part of it, but a lot of these things are being addressed. So will you work with them on what they already have in place and what they're doing with our community? I think the mayor's idea of getting out to the community is a good idea.
Yeah.
But and I asked you about your staffing for those facilities too, because there's not 7 of you. We'd love to have you in each location, but there's not 7 of you.
No, they're not there. We will bring on some additional people. We already have therapists who are part of our team. It's not just me, because we have an office in Columbus as well. But we probably have right now, I think we have 5 other clinicians who are part of our team, but we will bring on some additional people. As far as our relationship with River Edge, I don't want to say that what we're trying to offer is a little bit different. You know, there's parenting and then there's parenting, and but I know that I want to have a conversation with them to see where that can go and how we can maximize the relationship.
Yeah, I'd like to do that because we already have them in place, and this is a pilot program for you doing this for us. And if we can pass on those skills and keep it at home where we already have somebody in place, let them take over in the next year or so after this pilot program. We'll see how it does. But I think that we need to work with our local facilities to see what we have to offer and use you to help guide them a little bit more and help them and get them to a point that they continue on with the work you're already doing. But again, I go back to the parenting classes. I just think that's so important because our children, they come from a home, and that's what they're going to be surrounded with. And the parents or parent or whoever they grow up with around them is so important to them to teach them to go in the right direction for their life.
Exactly.
For their life.
Exactly.
You know. But again, thank you for what you're presenting here today. I know it will be a good program. I just think we can tag on to it with our own River Edge and DFACS and things like that for some of these things too. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. Thank you for your agreement to sponsor that legislation as well. We're going to move on. I think we have one more question before we close up, or maybe 2. Commissioner Jones and then Commissioner Lucas.
Just a couple of comments, Mayor, and maybe a question. And I appreciate Ms. Sisay's articulate presentation. I know of your good reputation through my better half, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She knows your name and knows of your good reputation. So I appreciate you being here today. And Mayor, I commend you on the program. I'm happy to be a sponsor. And even though I come from the business world, I have a BA in psychology and a minor in sociology. Most people are surprised to hear that.
I am.
And I think you covered one of my questions is the number of clinicians. You have 5 currently, and then I know this sounds like it's going to be a work in progress where you're going to incorporate and bring folks in from the different universities you mentioned. So, and it is a pilot program, but I'm all for it and happy to be a sponsor. And one of my questions really maybe for the mayor is, so you have the 5 clinicians, right? And then you're gonna add on to those.
I can answer that question, Commissioner John. I think that the 5 is what she has that is employed by her. The goal is to have 12 to 15 therapists at a minimal through all the partners, and that's the reason to have the great partnerships we have with the Mercer Medical School, Fort Valley State, Middle Georgia State University, Atrium, as well as COSM, all get involved. she'll have the funds available to her to contract out with each of these particular therapists to make sure that we have the right group handling everything. Certainly, we're not asking her and just 5 staff members to do this load by themselves. We realize that certainly we'd be overpaying $600,000 if we did that. But during our conversations with the staff and with the group, we believe that 12 to 15 be a sufficient number of staff to handle those, unless you get to a situation that I guess a good problem to have if we get more than we should get now. We may have to scale some things back, but this is a pilot project, and we're going to use that for that purpose because we want to have some measurables at the end of the year. I'm asking them to come back either on a quarterly or biannually update to provide this commission with information to show that this is working and we're making some progress and somebody's not just sitting back and doing nothing. Hence, that's why we did the monthly payments as opposed to doing the lump sum payment up front, as we want to be able to hold them accountable for what we've asked them to do and have some measurables at the end of that time. So I hope that answers your question, Commissioner Jones.
It did, and as I mentioned to you prior to the meeting, and this can be a separate conversation, whatever you think it should be, but how does this relate? And I know you're going to have counseling at the Warming Center in Brookdale, and many good-hearted people who want to help people and believe in that, but they want to know where we're going with the Warming Center as far as your goals, what that will transition into, what we hope to accomplish, and maybe you want to do that as an aside, but.
Yeah, and if, for time constraints, and I want to discuss that in this particular issue because we're targeting youth here and not necessarily the youth at the Warming Center. That was a location that we were thinking we were going to have for a long period of time, but I'll talk about that at the end of the meeting if that's okay.
Yeah, and when you say youth, I'm assuming some 25-year-old person who's, I don't know what your age parameters are of youth, but 25 or 35 wants to have counseling. I would assume they're going to be made available to the counseling and to the program that Ms. Sisse.
Yeah, it'll be made available for everybody, but our target's going to be the youth because this is involving youth violence and trauma, and we're trying to do early prevention. But certainly, when you get to be your age and sometimes my age, I think we consider everybody youth that are younger than us. I included myself in that. I see you looking at me.
That's the way I think.
Commissioner Lucas, I'm going to hopefully close out with you so we can move on.
Yeah, you're right. Y'all are old. A lot of us are. I wanted to really just state my support for this again. It's a pleasure to be a co-sponsor on this. I think this is one of the most important things that we can do for the community. And I don't want anybody to think that this is easy work. This is very, very difficult work. And it's not just going to take place during the time that they'll be interacting with these clients. There's more. There's a lot of work. A lot of times it's a lifelong kind of thing that you're dealing with. I'm interested to know about background checks. I want to make sure that as government, we are ensuring that anybody who performs services on behalf of Macon-Bibb County, because there are some terrible situations that have occurred in these relationships with counselor and client. So I'd like to know what the background check looks like, what we're requiring as far as that's concerned. And also, I know you'll be hiring or contracting with some folks, but I don't want there to be any drop off as far as security for families. So I just want to know what the background checks, who will ensure that those are done and who will do them.
Yeah, that's part of their due diligence, and not only that, they're going to be required to have the malpractice insurance as well. That's one of the requirements that we had to make sure that people involved in that cover.
Right. I think that's something that we as government need to make sure that we check.
Right.
Because you just don't want to have that can ruin your entire situation. We've had some well-publicized situations where background checks have not been done, or half done or whatever, and you had some bad situations.
Yeah.
So
As a part of our practice and the process that we have with the Division of Family and Children Services, everybody has a GCIC, NCIC background check. But we also, because we are really very familiar with people who prey on children, we have a different kind of way of asking people questions about that.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for
I'm
that.
a grandmother. I'm a little
Thank you,
crazy.
Commissioner Lucas.
Thank
I said I saw one of the light. Commissioner Pro Tem Clark, we're going to close it out with you, I hope. How you doing? I'm sorry.
Lots of lights.
Well, there's some more lights. Go ahead.
I just felt led to give you a real-world example of what I think we're about to fund. My sister is adopted. She went through the Bibb County, Baldwin County, and Monroe County DFAC system. During her time of being passed around, she moved in with us when she was about 5. 4, adopted when she was about 6. She was terribly abused throughout the process through her biological family, and then, unfortunately, the DFAC system. And Ms. Cisse and Andrea, it's because of people like you that she's alive. It was the therapists that DFAC's contracted with that stayed with her and found her way, got her on a path to get to our family and to be safe. She is a tax-paying citizen in a healthy relationship now, and she's alive. But she's not just alive, she is okay. And that's one person. And that benefits from somebody. And I think we could go around the room, all 9 of us could have that one person that we know. Hell, we might be that one person. And that's what I see this program here today. And I just had I felt a need to say that because I do think this is incredibly important. It's incredibly personal. And this is also my, same as Commissioner Jones, my wife is a therapist here in town. She contracts with the Bibb County school system at local nonprofit to be a therapist in low-income neighborhoods, and so we know this is a daily conversation that we have at home here and at my house, outside of my sister and my personal situation. But I want to make sure you guys you get everything you need. Like the mayor said, I don't think $600,000. Is anywhere near what this program needs. The scope of the plan that you guys drew up is beautiful. It is, $1 million plan, and we're funding about $600,000 of that, it seems like. So one of the things that the questions that came up for me was, if I know a lot of these patients that come to you aren't gonna have insurance, but they will be eligible for insurance. And does your intake system, do you anticipate it having room for, if they are eligible for Medicaid, getting these families signed up for Medicaid? And will those potential reimbursements be tilled back into the program to make this very short-funded program go a little bit further? And I know it's not, a Medicaid reimbursement is not, it's not $100,000, $200,000 a year annually, but when, you're dealing with the scope of 300 folks, it feels like every dollar will go a long way in this program. But that's my only question.
I think that should be a part of our sustainability plan. The identifying funding sources beyond what's happening here. I am on some insurance panels and the Medicaid insurance panels, and so I can see how that could easily fold into our sustainability plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Watkins?
Yes, thank you, sir. So early, a few times y'all have mentioned this as a pilot program. I guess I'm understanding pilot to mean that's the concept of it being monthly, or why is it not just a program?
It's a program for a year because we're not putting this in the budget. This is funds like a one-time grant. So we can actually have some measurables at the end of that year and decide how we're going to sustain the program. So when I refer to that as something that's not in the budget, your normal budget we would vote on in May and June. So that's why I call it a pilot program.
A little bit about program eligibility. Because I know you say you're targeting young folks in target areas, but it also, I guess I heard earlier, if, I don't know, me, not in the target area, above the target age came in, are you providing me services still at no cost, or what happens then?
We wouldn't turn you away simply because you're not in that age group or in a specific age group, or even if you find us and you're not in one of those neighborhoods, we're not going to turn people away. But we know that we are specifically doing this project to address 7 neighborhoods. So we will always keep that in mind, but we don't turn people away.
How do you plan, or please consider, how do you keep yourself from being flooded with 50% or 60% of your caseload being non-target area? And, because even at 50%, that's not exactly, that's taking a lot of your time for, and again, I don't have an income, I shouldn't have an income, well, shouldn't meet it, so why am I getting no cost at that point? Because I guess this is an industry where people make money and insurance could pay for it.
Yeah, well, people make money doing therapy. But so I think I understand what you're asking is what would we do if we have a lot of people who show up who are not in the targeted areas. So the first thing is we already have a practice, right, so that we can handle some of those. But the other piece I think we have to keep in mind is that our offices will be located in specific communities. So people in the community will know we're there, and the people in the community would probably be more likely to find us than someone who's not in the community. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But
proximity.
Yeah, proximity. And so, but I don't believe that we thought that all the way through, but I know that we will think it through and think about how we would address it.
So I'm a advocate of targeted universalism. Mm-hmm. You have a target group, you have a focus, and you have limited resources to accomplish that. Mm-hmm. I don't mind if some groups in the community are told no, or you come up with some low-cost maneuver for them. Mm-hmm. I know you're not there yet in this still, but I was just putting that out there.
Okay.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
So thank you. So, but I did want to talk a little bit about process. Explain to me again, this is professional services. Just explain to me why, how, and what was the...
What did that mean? You're talking about procurement on professional services again?
Yes.
Okay. You want to have that?
Yeah. As to why they are a professional service provider, they perform things that you're required to have training for, specific education for, like she's gone through her background, and I'm in a lot of the other therapy backgrounds. So the process specifically exempts us having to go through a bid process or an RFQ, and it's outlined in our code. Is that anything specific as to training or education that you need to do a service like they're doing is a professional service?
And it's mentioned that it's $600,000 coming from the CARES Act line item. What is the total amount of funding in that line item?
I'm looking at someone else. I think originally we talked about the 4 buckets of money, which was $4 million that was not allocated specifically, that expired and went into the general fund. We're still referring to it as the CARES Act money because that's where it was initiated from. It's really unrestricted funds in the general fund right now, if you want to be honest. But we're calling that the CARES Act money because I think we need to tie anything we use out of that particular money to something related to COVID for its intended purposes, even though we're not restricted to do so.
And correct, there's $4 million less than 600 in this COVID line item?
If you approve this, then there would be 4 million minus 600,000.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Watkins. And I won't say this again, but we have another person, Commissioner Wynn.
Just one more question. Seem like a dog with a bone, but you know, this is so important to the children of this community. I just keep focusing on that because that's what, going forward, they'll be the adults of our community. And the parenting part concerns me because I want the parents to, and you say sometimes parents don't want to come in for counseling because they think they're doing it right. And how do you reach those people? Can a child come in by themselves and ask for help if they feel threatened or there's issues for their life? Can they come in by themselves? Say they're 11, 12, 13 years old, or do they have to have a parent with them? Perhaps the parent is the problem and they're afraid.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I'm saying. I just, down the road, I mean, how do you handle that? That's just tough.
Yeah.
I think children are our future, and the children of this community are our future, and we want to lead them in the right direction. There's so much they can do with their lives. Sometimes they don't see it from the aspect of where they're living, you know, and I think that if they can get outside that, they can see more. But how do we measure the success of the things that you'll be doing, like anger management, parenting classes, and financial counseling and things like that?
Well, what we're going to do is use some standardized assessment tools at the front end of treatment or the interventions that we provide, and then we'll measure at the end. And so the difference in the score at the beginning and the difference at the score at the end should help us to be able to determine if there is any movement in what it is that people do.
Can you give that to us like quarterly during the year? Can you give those kinds of?
I think that is
Results
one of the
to us.
things that is anticipated, is that we would be
Okay.
providing some feedback quarterly.
And back to one question I had, the young people come in themselves as children, or they have to come in with an adult?
Well, technically, no, children can't get services on their own. However, oftentimes children come into therapy and they disclose things. They come into therapy for one thing, right? So they have families who have children with behavior problems generally see those kids as the identified client. We see them as the identified client. They could come in for one thing, right? Behavior problems. And during the course of interviews or play therapy or whatever it is that we're doing with them, they disclose things that are going on that are troublesome, right? Because, you know, we know that all too often children in families where there are problems of family, they're taught to keep the secret.
Yeah.
But sometimes people don't realize that troubling behavior is secret sharing, right? And so but if they come into, and we are mandated reporters, all of us,
Okay.
and as such, we would elevate that information up to whoever needs it,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Thank you for what you're going to try to do for our community. It's going to be
yeah.
a tough one.
Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. Again,
We hope in the end that crime will be affected too. I hope that's
I
part
think
of
we
the
have,
purpose.
I forgot to ask Commissioner Watkins, did you want to add on as a sponsor for that, Commissioner Watkins? Okay, and I think we got one final caller. Commissioner Tillman, hopefully he's going to add on as a sponsor and we can bring it home.
Absolutely. I think we also need a high chair for our folks that's asking questions, because usually in the back, they can sit down and ask questions. And so with that, I call for the question.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman. I don't see a need to call for the question, but I appreciate the vote. I think we've got everybody ready to vote on this. So we've had a motion and a second in favor of this motion. Please all say aye if you're in favor. Aye. Opposed, nay. And I think the record should reflect that all 9 members have, Commissioner Wilder, you're on there, right? All 9 members have agreed to sponsor this item. Just some household business here to take care of. We have 2 items, D, E, that I hope we can breeze through without too much issues. Item F, I apologize. I see some members here from Waste Management, Advanced Disposal. Maybe a couple of questions on that, so our lunch may catch you. We're going to try to get through D and E and take a 30-minute lunch break and come back and finish the rest of the calendar unless we run into issues with one of those 2 items. If we breeze through real quick and the commission wants to go ahead and start that process, we'll do that, but that would be my preference. So we'll begin with item D, which is a resolution of the Macon-Bibb County Commission authorizing the mayor to execute an intergovernmental agreement with Macon-Bibb County Enhancement Authority for lease for the Booker T. Washington Community Resource in exchange for payment of utilities, maintenance, and management of the facilities. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Second. Got a second by Pro Tem Clark. Any discussion in that regard? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Be sent to consent agenda. I do want to recognize Tedra, where's Tedra Houston? I'm sorry, you're right there in front of me. Is here from she's the Director of Community Enhancement Authority. She's been working on this project. Her and I have been working diligently to try to get a contract done that you're approving today. And she has several members here of maybe not necessarily her board, but the Booker T. Washington and the Pleasant Hill community. If those members will please stand up as well so we can recognize you. Thank you for being here today and showing an interest. I will say I visited yesterday to Booker T. Washington Center. We're getting very close to having a ribbon cutting there. It's a beautiful place. Stafford Construction has done a great job in making all the remodeling that they have there. I know we have a few things left to do, so we'll be scheduling that shortly thereafter. This is our first vote. We do have a unanimous vote today on this, and we'll be moving it to next Tuesday for final vote. But we appreciate you guys being here today.
Thank you.
Item E. A resolution of the Macon-Bibb County Commission authorizing the mayor to enter a county internship program grant agreement with the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia Civic Affairs Foundation for the purpose of receiving reimbursement for certain costs associated with employment county interns in approved grant funding positions May the 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2021. This is sponsored by myself and Paul Bronson. Commissioner Bronson, would you like to make that motion? Got a motion by Commissioner Bronson. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Pro Tem Clark. Any discussion on that matter? Commissioner Watkins, you had your... Okay, sorry. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Be sent to consent agenda. This time, I'd like to get some opinions from the commissioner, whether or not you believe that we need some additional time on F. This is the contract amendment with Waste Management Advanced Disposal Services. What is the pleasure? Would you like to go ahead and handle this matter? We have several behind that, so I know a couple of these are going to take some time, including the information item. Or would you like to take a recess at this time for a 30-minute lunch and then come back? Commissioner Wynn, you have an opinion?
Let's do it now, and I want to be a co-sponsor on this, too.
We got you as a co-sponsor. Any other members of the commission have an opinion about whether we handle this now or later? We are going to have to take a break if we do this first after that, because we have some lengthy items that may be addressed after that. Okay, I'll take that as a move forward. This time we'll go ahead and bring forth the item F, which is the resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an amended contract identified with Advanced Disposable, Macon LLC, for the purpose of adding the weekly collection of household yard waste and bulky waste throughout Macon-Bibb County, Georgia, for an estimated cost of $2,720,520 per year, effective April the 1st, 2021, payable from the Solid Waste Budget Collections Division, contract label, contractual services line item. That is a motion sponsored by me and co-sponsored by Commissioner Wynn. Would you like to make that motion? Got a motion by Commissioner Wynn. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Howell. We'll move on to discussion on that. I do know that Commissioner Watkins had some questions that were sent. I'm not sure if they've been answered yet. One item, let's go ahead and knock it out of the park first on the procurement item. There was a question about the procurement process and whether or not this needed to go through the procurement. I know our attorney here can probably answer that question first, so let's go ahead and get that out of the way before we get to these other questions. We'll go with Attorney Groover.
Thank you, Mayor. The procurement process, which is mandated by or set out by this commission, is designed to make sure that we get good services for the public at a at the lowest cost possible. Here, there was an agreement that was entered into with ADS through that process on March 17, 2020. And in that agreement, the scope of services was to provide for solid waste collection, carts, as well as recycling carts and recycling itself. The amendment that's being proposed is closely related to that scope of service because it has to do with yard waste, small yard waste, I think, and bulky items, relatively small. That would be put with those carts and put with that waste at the households. So the principle of law is, and we've done this before, is that when the amendment to be proposed is materially related to the original scope of service, you can handle this through the amendment process. You don't have to go through procurement. If they were proposing to run our landfill, for example, that would be a totally different service with totally different types of considerations. So is the opinion of the county attorney's office that a procurement doesn't have to be gone through in this case because of the close nature of the services in the amendment to the original. That answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Groover. And keep in mind, the landfill will be closed. We have a present agreement with Advanced Disposal right now for household trash. Our intention and plan for our solid waste plan over the next several years is to install convenience centers that we've been discussing for a while now, 5 strategically placed in Macon-Bibb County for various things from recycling to other debris except for household trash. This will not be an additional charge for the convenience centers for people that live in Macon-Bibb County. And several questions I've got, we will not stop at this time any bulk waste pickup at your house or recycling. Those will continue as planned. We do believe that this is the best manner. We lack the full equipment and staff, in our opinion, to handle the bulky waste at these locations for every household. We do realize that there are going to be, from time to time, there's going to be some issues that people face. When you're doing 48,000 to 50,000 households, quite honestly, there's going to be some times where you miss a stop, and we certainly are going to hold them accountable for any things that happen in that nature and deal with that accordingly. We have had very little, less than 1% complaints on those issues, and of course, if it's your house, it's 100% on you. So we certainly appreciate that. Macon-Bibb County lost $1.8 million running a landfill this last year. I think we've seen, based on the collection numbers we had last week of how many tons of trash we picked up through this new method that we've been using with a focus on getting our community clean. We cleaned out over 100 dumps this year as opposed to 20-something last year, and the community has really rallied around that. This gives us an opportunity to do a couple of things. It gives us an opportunity to shift some employees we have from the landfill to Public Works, Parks and Beautification to allow us to be fully staffed in there so we can maintain the services that we should have been providing since consolidation that really have not happened. The other thing is it will allow us to have all items picked up instead of going out there with a ruler for the most part and measuring whether it's 4 feet or 6 feet. They would be responsible for picking those items up on a bi-weekly basis at people's residences. We hope that people that can and will go by the convenience center take those before those, so we don't want them sitting there for a couple of weeks waiting to go. All of this is an attempt also to be more efficient as a government, to save money, as well as to combat the illegal dumping that we have. We don't have the trucks, the equipment necessary. We don't have the money set aside to buy enough equipment in that. We have been challenged very good with staffing to have a lot of vacancies that have been unfulfilled for various reasons. We feel like this is the best way to handle this. We feel like this is the best way to handle this, and we're bringing this to you for your consideration. Keep in mind, excuse me, done a lot of talking today. Keep in mind that this comes out of the money that the household pays now, the $20. So we'd be deducting that amount to pay for this full service, capturing that amount, because what we want to do is keep what we have in-house referred to as a strike team. When there's a serious issue that needs to be addressed, we have sufficient labor that are ready, willing, and able to go with the equipment we do have to tackle these projects. These could be the illegal dump sites. It could be any variety of issues that need to be handled. If somebody got missed, perhaps we can do that. But it gives us sufficient capital as far as employees to do that we can target this to help this process move smoother. We think this is going to be more efficient. I'm certainly asking for your approval on this. So at this time, if you have any further questions, we'll ask Dr. Moffitt, and I think we have a couple of representatives from Waste Disposal that can also answer those questions. Commissioner Watkins, I see your light on.
So I'm understanding you correctly that this would, right now we have I have a hybrid system where ADS picks up a portion of trash and the county picks up a portion of trash. Well, county employees pick up a portion of trash. So would this move us to 100% of the trash, residential household garbage is being picked up by ADS?
Yes, sir. If you recall, when we did the new contract with ADS, we explained it in 4 ways. You have household municipal waste, yard waste, recyclables, and what we call concierge services, the illegal dumps, the dead animals, things of that nature. The contract that we entered into January 1st of this year, ADS picks up household garbage 1 time a week. Macon-Bibb picks up yard waste, the undescribable cubic yard discussion that we've had bi-weekly. ADS picks up recycling and we continue with the concierge services. This contract will change that to where ADS will now continue to pick up the household with the one-arm truck. They will pick up the yard waste bi-weekly. They will continue to pick up recycling, and we will continue to do the concierge services.
So 3 or 4, the.
Correct.
So the weekly household garbage outside of what you call concierge service,
Correct.
we're doing, so,
Yes, sir.
okay. And I guess all right, I got that. And the change is from 16 to 20, they're going up almost $5?
Well, yes, it's going up from 11.05 to 16. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, 16 of the 20, okay. And so and I think Mayor Miller was alluding to this earlier. So the current solid waste collections the county solid waste collections team,
Yes, sir.
how many people are there and what's that annual
Currently
budget?
is 15 and 2 supervisors, I believe, and they have been doing the biweekly pickups and continue with that schedule. Plus, we have since January, when I took over as interim director, I told them to disregard the 2 cubic yard rule. So they've been pretty much trying to pick up everything. So it's been keeping them pretty busy. Plus, I've also had them at the end of their routes go back and do, I call them special calls that we've had in partnering with the illegal dump sites that Public Works and Parks have been doing also. And so when the mayor mentioned the term strike team, that's what I call them, because periodically throughout the week, I've had them go and pick up some special areas that have been brought to my attention.
Okay, so 17 employees, and then what's that annual budget?
The annual budget for solid waste is to include landfill, 9.1 million.
Just the collections division. Is 17?
I'm sorry. The collection division is 9.1.
So the 17 employees make up 9.1?
Yes. And that includes the contract with ADS.
Let me see. So average employee salary is 50,000?
With benefits, yes.
Okay. There's no way y'all don't have it like broken down by people who pick up trash, like just those?
I can get that.
Okay. And I guess my larger question, so of the 17, in order to keep the strike team, how many are actually needed for the strike team?
As we build this plan, I'm gonna make the recommendation that we keep it at that number. It's been working well. I've been getting a lot of compliments because also they've had times where they've actually gone out and did litter pickup. I've actually had citizens call me and been very thankful that we've done litter pickup on some of their roads.
Okay. And so we're turning over the money to ADS and we're keeping the staff. So it's definitely at that point not a cost savings mechanism, right? I'm looking at that right?
It's definitely a cost savings mechanism.
Walk me through it then.
Because we're not having the landfill that was losing $1.something million. It is separated. I think you probably need to send him that because we have a tree trimming part of the solid waste has multiple components to it. It's very complicated on how the budget comes out. But some of these folks are going to be going to actually man the maintenance areas. So we're not going to lose $1.8 million. That's the first savings because we're not going to have a landfill. We're going to be able to take those positions that we have with solid waste and actually transfers those to public waste to, Parks and Beautification and Public Works to save money there.
Not what he just said. He said he wanted to keep all 17
The strike team,
people
he
for the strike
does.
team.
But
that's not moving people.
that total
around.
number is 36 people. He just told you about that specific group.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how y'all help me, please? So let me back up again. So the 17 people is related to what?
Currently in the solid waste fund, but we can move that into the parks beautification and cover those vacancies and still have them doing some of the same duties. As we build this plan, that's what we're focusing on and what the greatest need is to accomplish what the services we're going with.
So you got one set of 17 people. Are they going? So eventually your plan is to do away completely with solid waste, and the strike team will be housed in parks and beautification. Am I understanding that right?
Or Public Works.
Or Public Works.
Or the need. Yes.
Okay.
Whichever we can work out. But the ideal is to minimize solid waste.
Okay, so
it's not going to happen overnight, but that's what we're working toward.
So on April 1st, this contract takes effect, right? Did I misread that?
Yes.
All right, and then there's 17 people who used to pick up trash every day on the route.
Yes, but again,
then on like
I want to
April
be
the
clear, 'cause
15th, what do they do at
I
that
want to
point?
manage expectations. It's going to take ADS some time to ramp up. They have to get some additional trucks, which is what some of our cost savings, because we don't have to go out and buy additional equipment. So some of our cost savings is coming in that operation also, not just people. Remember, part of the problem that we haven't invested in equipment over the years.
But y'all have been
Some of
working
those
on
trucks-
this a long time. So y'all have on paper somewhere like a cost projection sheet that y'all can forward over? So we can, because like for me, just on the back of my workbook, it seems like it's a negative, but y'all are saying it's a positive, so I would love to just see how that works out.
Yes.
Okay, I'll yield so I can just
Okay.
see the paper.
All right.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes, sir, thank you. Dr. Moffitt, I'm reading on here, it says, and I see Jared's here, I think that less than 1% is all in District 4. But your guy, Jordan, is very responsive, and he's done a great job. On the week, it says weekly collection of household yard waste, but I heard you say bi-weekly, so are we going to bi-weekly or weekly?
No, because I thought you were still doing bi-weekly on the yard waste.
Real quick, Mallory, Jordan's taking a job. He's not with us anymore. He's taking a job at Mobile, Alabama, where he's from.
So I get to call you?
Jermaine Hill is taking on a promotion now.
Okay.
Jermaine Hill's our new.
Mr. Lovett, Mr. Lovett, I appreciate your excitement. If you could get behind that microphone so we all can hear you, and we've got members watching at home, we'd love to hear what you're saying,
Yeah,
sir.
so Jermaine Hill's our new general manager for our Macon location, and he's taking that over and for Jordan. So what we propose to do is continue to run the garbage carts weekly. The recycle will be bi-weekly. And what we're trying to do is run the regular garbage truck to get small piles weekly. Because what we found out, it takes the same amount of time to get to a small pile as it does to run bi-weekly and get a big pile. Now, what is bi-weekly will be the large grapple truck. We put a 10 cubic yard limit on the size of the piles, which we mirrored after Houston County. And that's going to be 95% of all your piles, okay? And so then that grapple truck will run bi-weekly.
So
We'll be running a chase truck to get the extras or small piles and limbs weekly.
Okay.
Now, there will be some discretion when it's 100 degrees and it's hot. That pile's going to seem larger to the guy who's got to get out and get it. And he'll call it a large pile. So we will go through ebbs and flows of that we have to manage. But that's what our plan is right now.
So there is no 2 cubic yard limit, it just won't be necessarily on a weekly basis.
There will be a 10 cubic yard limit.
10 cubic yard
10
limit.
cubic, which is covers, we had this in Houston. And then one other size dimension was, I think we did a 4 foot in length, which is what we can get in the back of the rear load truck. You know, when you're like your own trucks are rear load, we need them cut in 4 foot lengths. So when that small truck comes by, you can possibly throw it in the back. That's the width there
Okay.
that we have.
So one of the biggest complaints from the public is on yard debris, it's every 2 weeks, but we don't know what day it's coming.
Okay, so we'll hope to mirror
could that one day be on the same day as you did household garbage and or recycling?
That is the plan, is to mirror the route of collections. Okay, it's the same thing with recycle. Recycle is every other week on the day of your collection.
Correct.
Now, to be fair, what the county staff has went through, and let's be fair to what we went through in 2017, is we had 2018, when you have hurricanes and you have abnormal amounts of rains and you have larger production, you're going to have more of that debris and you're going to fall a day or so behind to be, what Dr. Moffitt says, manage expectations. And we've went through that in 2018, and I think the county staff is going through now with staffing and equipment issues. But the proposal is to run the garbage and the recycle all in the same drive-by, all in the same week.
So would that same week on yard debris be the same day as the recycling, which is a different?
It'll all be
the same day, but it's a different week cycle. So the bi-weekly, would the recycle and yard debris fall on the same day?
So that bi-weekly yard waste with that grapple pile will take no input from the citizens. That'll be a call from our driver, because my driver's going bi-weekly. Okay?
The small waste.
He'll get the small piles, what we call arm load size piles, where he gets out buckets, extra, maybe a chair, maybe a TV. He's going to grab that weekly as he runs down the road, because it takes the same amount of time to get it weekly, the small piles. The grapple truck, what we're telling you bi-weekly, That's going to be self-reported by our own drivers with our camera systems.
Okay.
They'll take a picture, they'll photo it to us, and we'll route it. So those large piles will be done. And what we did is put a bi-weekly. That would give us ample time to circle. But that doesn't mean that grapple truck, it's kind of like your own grapples. That doesn't mean he's coming every other week on the same day of collection.
I understand.
But he's going to be notified if your day of collection, I believe you're a Thursday pickup. So, and so when we drive by your house on Thursday, I get his recycle. Actually, during COVID, we were all on trucks. Jermaine was driving, I was driving. It's, it's kind of funny because we're in force majeure right now, under a pandemic, and we've done a pretty good job of running.
Yeah.
But what you would be is he would drive by and he would look at your pile, and if you clipped your crepe myrtles and your azaleas and it was too big to burn up all that time, he'd photo that and send it in, and then within a few days the grapple would be behind to get that.
Yeah, well, I'm a Friday, but it doesn't matter whether it's a Thursday or Friday. If household garbage is on a Friday and the next week happened to be the bi-weekly for recycling, would that same Friday be the same day for small yard debris? Small yard debris.
Small yard debris would be weekly with your garbage. Every week.
The garbage.
Yes.
Weekly with the garbage.
Okay.
Weekly with there will be no bi-weekly. Bi-weekly is just recycle.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. I'm a Wednesday.
May I just add?
Yes, sir.
The key to your question is the public awareness campaign. And that's Chris and his team making sure that we educate the public and get that information out in the simplest terms and as many communication patterns as we can. So just that's the answer to your question is we got to educate the public on those times.
It was clear as mud before. It was totally confusing because nobody knew when they were coming. This will be a much better plan.
Correct. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Commissioner Tillman.
I'm going to direct. Well, it's good to see Jared here. I thought that was Orlando, but you said it's Jermaine. But I'm going to direct my comments at Commissioner Jones, because he probably gets more calls, and he had me change my mind a year or so about this thing. So Commissioner Jones, what we're looking for is we need Jared them to take a photo and show people what 10 cubic yards are, because no matter how smart we were in math, I don't understand the cubics. And so we're going to have to get them to say, well, can they put it in 2 piles? Or can you pick up the 10 cubics and come back the next time and pick up the other 10 cubics, because folks just don't know. And so, and I'm messing with you because I know you be on this thing, and you're going to get a lot of calls, and my folks call your folks and so forth. And so, and I know Jared number on speed dial because you know y'all are talking about it. But the education part of the 10 cubics, I don't know. Folks don't know. So my question to you, Commissioner, will you make sure that Jared